Hello, I'm Tessa Spencer, an archivist in the Outreach and Learning team at the National Records of Scotland, NRS. This talk will provide an introduction to the 1921 Scottish Census records on the National Records of Scotland's, or NRS, online service, Scotland's People. My talk will give a brief introduction to the census, explaining what it is, why it was compiled, and how and when it was taken, before considering in more detail the background and scope of the 1921 census. I will cover where you can access these records and how to search them, including hints and tips, and highlight some interesting and surprising examples throughout. But first, a quick overview of the NRS. Who are we? Where are we? And what do we do and hold? NRS is a non-ministerial department of the Scottish Government and was established on the 1st of April 2011, following the merger of the National Archives of Scotland and the General Register Office for Scotland. We have a duty to collect, preserve and produce information about Scotland's people and history and make it available to inform current and future generations. Before records were officially stored in the archive, there was no permanent accommodation for Scotland's national records. For hundreds of years, they were stored in various locations, including a place you may have visited, Edinburgh Castle. The accommodation was far from satisfactory, and the archives were damaged by damp and vermin. In 1765, a grant of £12,000 was obtained by Lord Frederick Campbell, the Lord Clerk Register, from the forfeited Jacobite estates towards building a proper repository. The proper repository would become General Register House. Designed by Robert Adam, it is one of his finest public buildings. It's also the first purpose-built public record repository in the British Isles, and is one of the oldest archive buildings in the world, still being used for its original purpose. The foundation stone was laid in 1774 and it opened to the public in 1789. NRS's collections are housed in 4 buildings in Edinburgh, 3 of which are in the new town: General Register House, New Register House and West Register House. The 4th, Thomas Thompson House, a modern purpose-built repository, can be found to the west of the city. NRS holds around 80 kilometres, 49.7 miles of records, which are stored in secure and temperature-controlled rooms. The records span from the 12th to the 21st centuries, touching on virtually every aspect of Scottish life. We are responsible for the public and legal records of Scotland, but we also have many local and private archives. They relate to a variety of subjects, including the church, law, government, and everyday life. We hold and make available one of the most varied archive collections of records in Britain. We will now turn our attention to census records. What is the census? When and why was it taken? It is a head count and survey of every person in the country on a given day. There has been a census in England, Scotland and Wales every 10 years since 1801, with the exception of 1941 and the sample census of 1966. The 2021 census in Scotland was moved to 2022 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Census records are closed for 100 years under the Freedom of Information Scotland Act 2002. Over the years, the questions which form the census have varied, but all are a guide to what the government at the time wanted to know about its population, including its size and age, location, sex, and the variety of occupations employing its citizens. Details captured by the census are used to inform government policy at the time. Immediately after the census was taken, statistics were made available publicly for demographic purposes, as is still the case. Today, however, these historical records provide a snapshot of people at a particular address on a given night, and so offer a rich resource of contemporary information. This can be used to further your research for direct ancestors, to broaden your knowledge of the local community, and to act as a bridge between the statutory registers and parish records. How was the census compiled? For every census year, each district has an enumerator, a person employed in taking a census of the population, who from 1861 was appointed and responsible to the local registrar. This example is a detail from a list of people, including 2 women, qualified to act as enumerators for the registration district of Mungai, Dumbarton, for the 1921 census. A week prior to the census, the enumerators had to deliver a form, known as a schedule, to each household in their district. They had to persuade the head of the household to complete the schedule with accurate information in response to the questions asked of everyone who stayed in that dwelling on census night, which was always a Sunday. To refuse to answer a question or provide false information rendered the householder liable to a penalty. The completed schedules were collected the day after the census. The governor of any public or charitable institution, such as a prison, poorhouse, or hospital, where more than 100 people usually resided, was appointed enumerator for that institution. The completed schedules were copied into enumeration books for that district and sent to the central authority, who from 1861 was the Registrar General for Scotland. Information from these books was used to compile statistics as the government required. The original schedules were destroyed once the enumeration books had been completed, although there are some rare surviving examples. The image here is of a specimen sample schedule found preserved within the census files of the General Register Office for Scotland. You can view large-size images of the obverse and reverse size of the schedule on the 1921 Census Guide on the NRS website, a link to which will be provided later on. The Census Act 1920 came into effect before the 1921 census and is still the primary legislation for the delivery of the census in Scotland, England and Wales. The Act dealt with the provision of funds for the census to be undertaken, penalties for those who did not complete it, and also allowed for a census to be taken every 5 years. The 1921 census of the population of England, Wales and Scotland was taken on the night of Sunday the 19th of June 1921 from the head of every dwelling, institution and vessel. The 1921 Scottish census records are the enumeration books, which contain information described from the household schedules, and the original schedules were destroyed, as with all previous censuses from 1841 to 1911. In contrast, the 1911 and 1921 England and Wales census records are the original household schedules completed by the head of the household. The 1921 census was originally scheduled to be taken on the 24th of April. However, due to extensive industrial unrest, it was postponed until Sunday the 19th of June, as was the case in England and Wales. Here we can see a telegraph from the Registrar General to the Registrar at Mungai, informing him of the census postponement on the 14th of April 1921. To Registrar Burs Mungai, census postponed. Stop delivery of schedules to public, so instruct enumerators at once. Await further instructions. Registrar General. The back cover of the guide Instructions to Registrars and Enumerators shows amendments in red to the 1921 census calendar. As a consequence of the summer date, mass displacement of the population occurred as people travelled from their usual residences to holiday destinations across Scotland and the wider UK. The Registrar General noted that the censal population of a number of areas was unduly inflated by the presence of summer visitors, especially those of seaside and other such resorts. This means that individuals and families may not be where you expect to find them in the census, and families may also be fragmented. The impact of the First World War and the Great Influenza epidemic, commonly referred to as the Spanish flu, were reflected in changes to questions asked in the 1921 census. New questions relating to the population of young people were introduced. The number of orphans living at each address were surveyed for the first time and asked whether their father, mother, or both parents were deceased. The number of dependent children, and the first time a question was asked on whether a marriage had been dissolved by divorce. The question on infirmity was removed, but a new question asking whether individuals were eligible for benefit under the National Insurance Act 1911 was included. This was introduced to help calculate sick pay and unemployment in some industries. Information regarding an individual's place of work and details of their employer were also asked in the Scottish 1921 census. The guide, Instructions to Registrars and Enumerators, outlines the responsibility of the registrar to follow up in the event that a person refuses to complete a schedule. The guidance recommends that the registrar should call on such person and by persuasion endeavour to obtain the necessary particulars and have a schedule filled up and completed. The guide also emphasised the special attention enumerators should pay to checking that each column in the schedule had been completed correctly by the head of the household. You can download a PDF of this guide from the 1921 Census Records Guide on the NRS website. A link to this will be provided later on. When the enumerators copied this information into the transcript books, they used abbreviations. For example, marriage and orphanhood, BA, both parents alive, FD, father dead, MD, mother dead, BD, both parents dead. For the occupation and employment columns, HD for home household duties, E for employer, W for worker, employee, OA, own account, i.e. self-employed, RET for retired, and OW for out of work. This is a photograph of 1921 Census Office staff, which was taken on the steps of George Heriot School in Edinburgh. Dr. James Crawford Dunlop, who was appointed Registrar General for Scotland in 1921, is seated in the middle of the first row. In 1911, he was the Superintendent of Statistics and ran the 1911 census. The majority of staff working on the census appear to have been women, and their pay was significantly lower than their male counterparts, as seen in this detail from a table of census workers. Official reports for the 1801 to 1931 censuses are available on HISPOP, the online Historical Population Reports website, and provide useful background information about the taking of the census, interesting analyses of the results, and statistical tables. According to the 1921 Census Report, Volume 2, published in 1923, the population of Scotland on the 13th census day, the 19th of June 1921, had reached 4,882,497 inhabitants. 2,347,642 males and 2,543,855 females, twice as large as had been recorded in 1831 and 3 times the size as in 1801. However, the effects of the First World War and the influenza pandemic, known as Spanish flu, have been felt by local communities, and were reflected in the 1921 returns. Between the 1911 and 1921 censuses, the male population had grown by 38,803, or to 1.7%, and the female population by 82,790, or to 3.4%, totaling 121,593 individuals, or a growth of around 2.6%. This, however, was the smallest increase since 1801 in any census period due to war and emigration. The list of occupations and professions was widened for the 1921 census. The 1921 Census Report, Volume 3, includes an index to occupations, which is also available on HISPOP, the online Historical Population Reports website. How can you access and search the 1921 census records for historical research? They are made available as index-linked, full-colour digital images on the Scotland's People website, at the Scotland's People Centre at NRS Edinburgh and local family history centres in Scotland. Scotland's People is the official Scottish Government resource where you can access digital images of the open census records, as well as statutory registers of births, deaths and marriages, old parish registers, legal records and more. Once you have registered an account on the site, you can search the indexes for free and pay to view the images. You can search the census and other record indexes free of charge on Scotland's People, but in order to view images, you will need to purchase credits. You can navigate to the Our Charges page via the Our Charges tab in the blue header on the home page. This page gives an overview of the credits and costs of the different record categories available to search, and there is a link to buy credits. The minimum number of credits you can buy is 30 credits, which costs £7.50. The census records cost 6 credits each, £1.50 to view. The 1921 census records are made up of over 9,000 enumeration district volumes and 200,000 images of 4.8 million individual records, which can be searched, viewed and saved, and have been added to the census returns already available on Scotland's People. Census returns is a record category in advanced search on Scotland's People and covers the 1841 to 1921 Scottish censuses. There is a two-step process to navigate to this page. First of all, log into your account and then click on Advanced People Search on the home page. Then select the record category Census Returns, and on the same page, beneath the Census Returns category, is the Census Search, where you can select a census year, for example, 1921. You can search on some or all of the following fields. Surname, so spellings can vary, but there are several search options available. Exact names only, wildcards allowed, names that begin with, and phonetic matching. You can search by forename. You may find variations in names. For example, Margaret may be enumerated as Maggie. A forename of other person on that census page. So add the name of another person you would expect to find in the household to narrow your research. Please note that this search looks for names on the same census page. As a result, it does sometimes find name matches for people who are not in the same household. It won't find a match if the household is over 2 pages and the names are on the separate pages. If they have a common name, it may be quite time-consuming to search through all the possibilities. You can search by gender, by age range, from 1851 at the exact ages recorded in the census, by county, including shipping, from 1851, and lastly by district, but please note that not all districts are valid for all years. If a search returns no results for a specific district, try widening the search to all districts for the county. There are search tips in pop-up green boxes for each field in the search form, which links to more detailed research guides where appropriate. In this example, I've entered Chisholm and Mari into the surname and forename fields. Mari Chisholm volunteered as an ambulance driver and first aider on the Belgian front during the First World War, and we'd like to find out if she was in Scotland at the time of the 1921 census. We then click on the orange search button. On the results page, the following fields are listed at the top of the page in black capital letters, highlighted in this image with an oblong box. The surname, forename, year, so that's the census year, gender, age at census, ref, which is reference number, RD name, which is registration district number, and county city. If you are faced with multiple results, you can sort the search results by clicking on any field, for example, ref. This particular option will reorder the entries by their reference number, so entries with a shared surname in the same household should be together. Please note that a household's entry may continue onto a following page. There may be people with different surnames in the same household, and there may be more than one household on a page with the same surname. Happily, in this instance, Mari Chisholm is an unusual name, and so there are only 2 results. We know from other research that Mari Lambert Chisholm, age 25, is the correct one, so click on the option View 6 credits at the end of the index entry to link to the digital images of the relevant page in the enumeration book, which is spread across 2 pages. Chisholm's entry in the 1921 census can be found towards the foot of the left-hand page of the columns. At the time of the census, Chisholm was staying with her cousin, Jane Hyde Fraser, aged 57, at Winnenow in Nairn. 2 servants, Elizabeth MacDonald, aged 24, and Jessie Fraser, aged 71, were also resident on the night of the census. At the top of the page, circled in purple, you'll see that you'll have options to return back to results, view header, to view previous image, which is 6 credits, or the next image for 6 credits, and download the image as a PDF. The header contains digital images of the preliminary section of the enumeration book, including the title page, description of the enumeration district, and summary statistics compiled by the enumerator, and they are free to view. Directly above the image are a selection of icons to save and print the image and also to help you view it. The functionality of these icons is explained in more detail within the technical help guidance on the website. If we look at the top of the census image, which is more closely, we can see the different columns and the information collated. At the top of the left-hand page, you can find the boundary details, such as the name of the civil parish, which in this case is Nairn. Beneath this are the columns which comprise the following information: the number of the schedule, the address of the house or institution, houses and holdings, the numbers of rooms and people in each. This information was used to assess housing conditions, the surname and forename of each person, the relationship to the head of household or family members, visitors, lodgers and servants, the age, the gender, whether single, married or widowed, and the birthplace, which gives the county and parish or country of birth. The columns on the right-hand side of the page comprise the following information: nationality for people not from the UK, Gaelic, which shows whether the person spoke G, Gaelic, or G and E, Gaelic and English, personal occupation. If you find an abbreviation or unknown term, check the glossary on the Scotland's People website or the index to occupations previously mentioned on the HISPOP website, status, whether an employer or employee working on our own account, unemployed or retired, employment details, the name of the employer, whether national insurance is held, M or F noted the person's sex, but if there was no insurance held, this field was left blank, and the number of dependent children under the age of 15. Enumeration books for larger institutions or establishments, such as barracks, hospitals, prisons and schools, are in a different format. Here's an example from the 1921 census for an institution in Glasgow. To find out the name of the institution, you select the View Header Free button above the census image, as previously highlighted in the census return for Mari Chisholm, and the title page will be displayed. Here's a detail from the title page of the institution we found in Glasgow. As we can see, it relates to the Roman Catholic Reformatory for boys in Glasgow. For further guidance on using census returns, understanding parishes and districts, and a glossary of occupations, please see our record and research guides on the Scotland's People and NRS websites. So for Scotland's People, there's a census returns guide and a guidance for parishes and districts and a glossary. And on the NRS website, there's the research guide for census records and specific ones for each census, including the 1921 census, as well as guidance about the registration districts. The 1921 census has been indexed based on name, in common with earlier censuses on Scotland's People. However, we have provided the surviving street index books as a research aid. These indexes provide parish or registration district and enumeration book references for each road or street in urban areas. The indexes have been converted to PDFs and can be downloaded from the 1921 Census Records Guide on the NRS website. The street indexes available for 1921 are Aberdeen, Dunfermline, Edinburgh, the Hebrides, Inverness, Kirkcaldy, Montrose and Perth. If you cannot find an individual or family in the census records, try the 1920 and 1925 valuation rolls, where you can search by address. If you do a quick people search, your results will likely include census records so you can compare with other years. Look up post office directories for 1920 to 1922 via the Internet Archive, and widen your search to the 1921 census for England and Wales, as the family or individual may have been on holiday or working outside Scotland on the night of the census at Find My Past. No human endeavour is 100% perfect, and as such, the censuses are liable to human error. Inaccurate information may have been provided by the head of a household, whether deliberately or accidentally, and an inattentive enumerator may have made a mistake when transcribing a schedule into his book. This example is a letter from the 24th of June 1921 sent by John Robertson, Registrar for the Mungai District, to the Registrar General regarding transcription errors, in which he says, "One of my enumerators has made some bad errors in his transcription of schedules into his enumeration book, and if at all possible, I would be obliged if you could let me have a fresh book. C for 700 names." Comparing one census to another, people do not always age by 10 years. Even though there was a threat of a penalty, some people provided inaccurate information, perhaps out of vanity or to disguise their origins. However, in some cases, the head of the household may have passed on information in good faith, and some people may not have been certain of their birth year. In addition, you may find people appearing twice in the census if they are enumerated at home and at another residence. You may also find transcription errors in the indexes when carrying out some searches, and these should be reported to Scotland's People via the Contact Us form on the website so that they can be corrected and updated. The above points are all worth bearing in mind when conducting research and highlights the importance of comparing information with other sources. We've discovered many interesting and notable entries in the 1921 census. However, we did not expect to find a baby boy who was born just 1 hour before the census was taken at midnight on the 19th of June 1921. The boy, not yet christened and noted as 1 hour old, is enumerated at 6 Oakwood Terrace, Dundee, with his father, Edward Batchelor, a potato merchant, and his mother, Jenny, née Frayne. There was also a domestic servant living with the family named Elizabeth Singer, originally from Kincardine. The boy's birth entry on Scotland's People confirms that he was Edward Robert Lockhart, and he was born at 11:05 p.m. on the 19th of June 1921. Edward was known later in life as Dr. Lockhart Frayne Bell and served in the Second World War and worked in the National Health Service. He died aged 99 on the 2nd of September 2020 in Dumfries, nearly a century after he first appeared in the 1921 census. Another notable entry is James Todd, enumerated age 109 years old in the 1921 census, living at a lodging house, according to a previous page, in Dumfries. There is a red asterisk by his name and a corresponding note in red at the foot of the page, which makes reference to a schedule, which were destroyed, to try and solve the issue. The note, made in 1923, states the following: schedule says January 24th, year 1812. LH, lodging house keeper, says he would be about 50. And it stated this note the 15th of the 3rd, 1923. To leave you with one last example, one of the more unusual entries we found are 3 young men, all called Donald, who were enumerated in a tent in Knockbane, Ross and Cromarty, on the night of the census. Donald A. McKinnon was the head of the household, aged 17, with 2 companions, Donald S. Munro, aged 17, and Donald Miller, aged 16. McKinnon was employed as a seedsman, Munro was at school, and Miller was a clerk employed by the Highland Railway Company. Another interesting entry can be found at the foot of the page, circled in purple, for William Campbell, who was unable to tell his birthplace. You can explore more stories we found in the 1921 census on the News and Features page on the Scotland's People website, as well as articles on the NRS blog Open Book. For wider reading, NRS's website provides information on records relating to Scotland's people, places and history. You can find links to the catalogues and indexes, as well as research guides from the home page. It is also worth spending a little time exploring the website to read features relating to the records, information about registration, conservation, and any news we want to share. If you are new to research using original records, the Scottish Handwriting website provides practical online tuition to help improve your skills. Assistance is also provided in our guide on reading older handwriting and a glossary of abbreviations, words and phrases. You could also sign up for the University of Glasgow's Future Learn course on early modern Scottish paleography. This official guide to the records made available via NRS and Scotland People is indispensable for family historians and biographers. The 7th edition is packed with information about how to trace genealogy in the unique treasure trove of Scotland's National Archives. It's available for the first time in both paperback and ebook versions, and you can purchase a copy from all good booksellers or online via the publisher Berlin and other retailers. You can find out more about family and historical research on Scotland's people, and you can keep up to date with news and events by subscribing to our newsletter and following Scotland's People on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to this talk. I hope you found it useful for your research. And if you have any questions after today's conference, please get in touch with us at education@nrsscotland.gov.uk. Goodbye.